3 million people visit New Zealand every year, and almost every single one of them goes to the same 4 places: Queenstown, Milford Sound, Hobbiton, Auckland Harbour. The loop is tight, it's expensive, and it's designed to feel like the whole story. But it isn't. The real New Zealand didn't get a marketing budget. It didn't get a TripAdvisor ranking. It got something better. It got left alone. Today we're going to 3 places that most tourists never find. Not because they're remote, not because they're dangerous, but because nobody's pointing at them. Places that carry the actual weight of this country. The geology, the history, the survival. The kind of beauty that doesn't fit inside a square photo. We're going beyond the postcards. Location number 3, Cape Palliser. Number 3, Cape Palliser. Most people can't place it on a map. It sits at the very bottom of the North Island, where the Pacific Ocean and the Cook Strait collide in a permanent argument. The drive down is one of the loneliest coastal roads in New Zealand. No barriers, just gravel, cliff edge, and a sea that is genuinely annoyed about something. And when you finally arrive, 5,000 fur seals, just living their lives on volcanic rock. This colony was nearly wiped out entirely, hunted to almost nothing during the colonial sealing era. What you're looking at now is one of New Zealand's quiet conservation recoveries, decades in the making, documented by the Department of Conservation since the 1990s. And there's no gift shop, no admission fee. There is a car park, maybe. But here's what the seals don't tell you. In Maori tradition, Cape Palliser, known as Marakitaki a Kupe, is where the great Polynesian navigator Kupe first set foot in Aotearoa, the founding footstep, the first moment of contact between human beings and this land. You can stand exactly there, in the wind, on that rock. Above the seal colony, 258 steps lead up to the Cape Palliser Lighthouse, the oldest on the North Island coast, built in 1897. And I'll tell you honestly, step 180 is where it gets personal. But at the top, you're looking at the South Island, the Cook Strait, and the Hikurangi subduction zone running beneath your feet, the fault system that produces more earthquakes per year than anywhere else in New Zealand. A 2021 GNS science study confirmed annual ground deformation along this coastline. The cliffs aren't just dramatic, they're moving. And most tourists drive straight past on their way to the Martinborough Wine Trail. There's a schoolteacher from Masterton, 40 kilometers from Cape Palliser, who had never been here. She took her students to Queenstown every year for their New Zealand experience. Beautiful, expensive, generic. A colleague from the local Rangitani iwi finally said to her, "You took children to Queenstown. You should have taken them to where Kupe landed." The next school holidays, she drove them here. Standing in this wind, watching these seals, one of her students said, "Miss, this is New Zealand." That's Cape Palliser. Number 2 is different. Number 2 has a wound in it that hasn't fully healed. Location number 2, Ōpōtiki. Number 2, Ōpōtiki, Bay of Plenty. Population roughly 3,000. Most visitors don't stop. They're heading east toward Whakatane, or west to Tauranga. They pass right through on the Pacific Coast Highway. They don't see what's underneath it. This is St. Stephen's Anglican Church, built in 1864. And in March of 1865, something happened here that would be used to justify the largest land confiscation in the history of the Bay of Plenty. A German missionary named Karl Volkner was killed here. The Crown used the event to declare the surrounding iwi, Whakatohea, guilty of rebellion. And then it confiscated their land. 448,000 acres, taken, legally, from people who, according to a 2022 Waitangi Tribunal report, largely had nothing to do with the killing. The punishment came before the investigation. The law was already written. This isn't ancient history archived in a box somewhere. The grandchildren of the people who lost that land are still alive. They run businesses on the main street you drove through without stopping.
There's a man named Tamati Rongomatane, 58 years old, historian and oral knowledge keeper for the Whakatohea iwi, who decided he was tired of tourists not stopping. In 2019, he started a walking tour, Te Ara o Ngā Tupuna, the Path of the Ancestors. He takes visitors to the church, to the original power sites, to the riverbanks where his people fished before the war and kept fishing after it. He doesn't perform culture, he tells the truth. Within 2 years, the tour was booked out 6 weeks in advance. A 2022 Lincoln University study on cultural tourism economics found that authentic, community-led experiences generate up to 3.8 times the local economic benefit of standard scenic tourism. People stay longer, spend more locally, and come back. What Tamati built in Ōpōtiki is exactly that, and he built it on truth, not performance. The Ōahiwa harbour turns silver in the late afternoon light. Kiwi birds nest in the surrounding bush. The church smells of cold timber and old stone. And the story inside those walls is still waiting to be fully told by the people whose land surrounds it. This is not comfortable travel, but the most important places rarely are. Number 1 survived something catastrophic and then was quietly forgotten, and the forgetting is almost the most interesting part. Location number 1, Murchison. June 17th, 1929, a Tuesday morning. A magnitude 7.8 earthquake struck a small New Zealand town called Murchison. The shaking lasted more than a minute. Roads closed. The Buller River changed course. The Matakitaki landslide, triggered by the quake, dammed 3 rivers simultaneously. GNS Science later described it as the largest recorded landslide in New Zealand history. 17 people died. The town rebuilt, and then almost nobody talked about it again. No national memorial, no major museum, no heritage trail. There is a small local museum, genuinely beautiful, run almost entirely by volunteers. One of them is a man named Graham Sinclair. Graham is 67. His grandfather survived the 1929 earthquake by being thrown clear of his farmhouse into a paddock. He always told the story the same way, without drama. The land moved, he'd say, then it stopped, then we got on with it. That's Murchison's whole personality. This is a town that does not require you to be impressed by it. One afternoon, a school group from Auckland arrived on a detour. The teacher mentioned, almost apologetically, that none of the students had heard of the 1929 earthquake. Graham went quiet. Then he said, "That's why I'm here." He held up an old photograph. The town flattened, the river sideways, the hills cracked open, and just let it breathe. Visitors who planned to spend 1 hour stayed for 3. New Zealand sits on the boundary of 2 tectonic plates. GNS Science's 2023 fault monitoring update gives a 26% probability of a magnitude 8.0 plus earthquake on the Alpine Fault in the next 50 years. The most seismically active corridor in the country runs right through this valley. Murchison sits at the centre of it, quietly, getting on with it. The Buller River runs through Murchison in shades of green that cameras struggle to capture. Too alive, too luminescent. The Matakitaki Valley looks like something poured from above and left to set. There's a fish and chip shop, there's a pub, there is almost no phone signal. And at night, the stars are obscene, Cape Palliser, or